AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Hi, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Froggatt, and we are joined today by Nimit Jain, who is Head of Data Science at the Analytics Center of Excellence at Novartis here in the US. Nimit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. And Nimit, it would be great if you could start off by telling the audience a little bit about your journey, how you got to your current role as the Head of Data Science for Novartis, starting off with academics choices that led you to getting into data.
Right. Yeah, I think exactly. So it's been a long journey, and it's exciting to be in this area now. I would say it was not by choice, but by chance. I completed my PhD about 12 to 13 years back in the area of operations research, and since then. I've been doing a lot of work around data, helping these organizations to really mine and help them understand, what actions they can drive out of data. So I moved from, doing my PhD to working for McDonald's supply chain group, trying to optimize their supply chains for a lot of the things which you see in the McDonald's store. And thereon, I moved to designing supply chains, on optimizing supply chains for Procter and Gamble. There were a lot of things which you use today. We were trying to make sure that we provide the reasonable price to the customers. And from there on, I think that initial part of the journey was more around supply chain analytics. Supply chain design, but then from there on, I moved to more customer transaction data, different kind of data set, trying to, I was working with a bank there, and that's where, I moved from more of I would say, an individual contributor role to be more, started managing and building teams. So I was working with a bank in Singapore for quite some time, and from there on, then I took a detour to another different sector, which is pharmaceutical, and I joined Novartis about almost 5 years back, and it's been an exciting journey. And here now I have built a team, big team from the scratch, from the time from hiring them, grooming them. And it's a very complex journey I've been through, I can say.
Yeah, and it looks like you obviously been in Singapore, and starting with Novartis, you were in Switzerland as well before coming over to the US. How is it different? Obviously, different domains, different organizations, but is data seen any differently in the different parts of the world?
Yeah. I think I would definitely say, US is any day data, very data rich, right? I think all the analysts would tell you, even the business will tell you. I think the kind of data US has is none of the countries I've ever seen. It's very clean, it's very rich, it's very granular. So as a data scientist, you can really make a lot of exciting models and a lot of experimentations. But at the same time, we have to also realize the same kind of data competitors also has, right? So I think we have to always find the competitive advantage, how to really do something differently what others are not doing. But I think to answer your key question, yes, US is very data rich. And then I think if you go back to Europe, I think Europe is also quite data rich. The only thing is the granularity is not at the level of what you would see in US. You have a lot of third-party data sources also available in the US versus what you would see in other parts of the world.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Novartis now and what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, so again, I think it's more breadth than the depth in my day. I think when I say breadth is all around talking to different business stakeholders to understand their business problems. trying to help them see if, how data science can enable and help them, educate them really what is AI, what is ML, what is not AI, and also, working with my team to groom them and coach them to manage their expectations, and also making sure that we create leaders for the future in this area, because I think the demand is really huge, and we need people to not just be data scientists but also very business oriented data scientists. So I would say that's the depth part of it, where it's more around stakeholders and internal team. And also, I would say partnerships, right? Trying to see, look out for things where others are working externally, and how we can be motivated and inspired in things we do. And then I would say the depth is all around. I still like to be a very hands-on data scientist, because until you really is hands-on on some of these projects, you would not understand the pain of industrializing and scaling some of the solutions. You'll not understand what it really takes to make a business impact. And I think your interactions with the business would also not be very rich. So I ensure that there is a fine balance of breadth and the depth in my day-to-day. And also I read a lot, because as anybody can imagine, right, this area is changing at a super fast pace. So to make sure that you are relevant, I think the reading is most important. So I think these are some of my day-to-day activities.
Okay. And how are you guys actually using data science then? So what are you trying to solve problem-wise? You mentioned obviously starting your career on the supply chain side. Obviously there's a massive supply chain within the pharma industry, but I'm assuming that's not all you are focused on. You're focused in other different areas as well?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one thing we can definitely say we as a company are very data rich, right? And I think what I have seen personally from the time I joined to now, there's been exponential growth in terms of the complexity of the problems we solve, and also in terms of the number of problems to be solved, right? So all of that has increased. And without going into too much details of what we solve, I think my role involves solving problems across the value chain, right? For example, how we can improve the operational efficiency of the clinical trials, how we can ensure that we preempt any production issues to maintain high service levels for some of the life-saving drugs. And also, going to, once you launch the drugs, how to ensure that you provide right access to our medicines to ensure no patients remain without medicine. So I think being an analytics center of excellence gives me the breadth of in terms of the different functions and domains I can touch, and also helps me bring synergies among these different functions to see how we can really cross-learn and cross-share across these value chain of different problems I mentioned. And I think one thing also we have to realize, as I said, we are definitely a data-rich company. But I think the key challenge is also the data is not very clean, it's not complete, it's not harmonized. So as a data scientist, some of the things which I also do is how to ensure that we are able to parallelize some of these things and not depend for ideal state to be ready. And therefore, I think some of the work which involves is trying to be very smart in trying to make sure that we're able to extract the insights with these constraints across the problem areas which I just mentioned.
Yeah, no, it must be really interesting to have different challenges come across your desk every single day, and how are we going to solve it? What is the business solution trying to actually get? What does good look like as far as what the end results are? Saying that, how important of a role do you feel data modeling plays in the pharmaceutical industry now?
This is, I think, is in connection to what I just said, right, about the data. I think the data modeling is very, very critical for us as a business to really, for help business actually to realize value out of the investments they are making in the AI initiatives, right? because otherwise it's a very common phrase where junk in, junk out, right? So you have to make sure that you address these data challenges by parallelizing the data science activities. And plus, also through these data science activities, when you realize what are the data issues and the data gaps, we don't hide like an ostrich, right? But then we really act upon those and fix the core data problems, which I think, I would say is 80-20 solvable. You cannot solve everything. But I think, 80-20, it can be still solved. And it's also a lot of these biasness in the data comes from, this information being captured manually, right? So I think once the discipline and the culture of data culture comes into the company, then I think a lot of the cultural problems can be solved. But then, yeah, analytically, when you talk about data modeling, that also plays a very important role to make sure that all of the legacy historical data which we have, which is where the data scientists really learn and extract the patterns out. We need to fix those data as well as much possible, and for the future, fix more around going to the root cause of those data biasness and data issues needs to be addressed to really reap out the, as I said, the impact and the initiative of these big investments the companies are making.
What do you think? You said building your team, creating things from scratch. What do you think? What do you look for when you are trying to hire a data scientist? So, what makes a good data scientist for you in your team?
For me personally, if I see among the different team members we have had, and the growth I have seen for some of the individuals, I think the passion to learn and be curious is what I would say distinguishes some of the top-notch data scientists. Because as I said previously, right, this area is changing dramatically. What we would have learned in the school and college, if you rely on that for us to really steer forward, it can only take you that far. Mm-hmm. The people whom I've seen succeeding is the one who brings continuous innovation, continuous eager to learn, and also having a business mindset is very important if you're working in a business organization to iterate with business and improve your algorithms and your insights. I think that flexibility also really makes a good data scientist, right? So it's an amalgamation of all of these couple of things I mentioned.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So what about advice then? If somebody is trying to advance their career, if they're already a data scientist, or if they're looking to get into data science and become a data scientist for the first time, what are the key things you think that they should study, learn, know more about?
See, I think because when we talk about data science, right, I think one thing we typically forget is that data science is also very broad. Or there are different layers of data science. Are you talking about people who are expert in image? Are you talking about people who are expert in natural language processing? Are you talking about people who are expert in causal analytics? Are you talking about people who are expert in storytelling of the data science output? And therefore, as a data scientist, we have to really choose that specific area where you want to become expertise, one or two areas, and really strive to go into depth. I think that, because being in data science is like being an MD in the medicine's world, right? There are a lot of doctors out there, but we need to really become an MD in specific area where we are able to really shine and outperform everybody, so that we know that if we have this problem to solve, we know whom to go to, right? So you need to become sort of a SME in some of these areas by either participating in simple Kaggle challenges, or making sure you bring some of these learnings in the projects data scientists do, because most of the time when you come to solving a business problem, the solutioning part of it is defined by the data scientist, right? And if you are an expert in some of these areas, you have to make sure that you bring those areas into those problem solutioning, um, to have a continuous refinement in your knowledge, and then also trying to see how you're able to operationalize those knowledge to make a real business impact.
I feel that you've had to use that analogy before. It's like being an MD. You have to specialize in something. No, that makes a lot of sense. So main advice then would be to find what you're passionate about. Make sure that there's a correlation. It doesn't have to be domain experience as far as what industry you work in. Just be good at something and make sure you spend a lot of time getting better at it. Is there new trends, anything going on in the market that you wanted to bring up?
I would say that the key challenge is a lot of the new methods and new way of solving the old problem or the new problems are still being researched, right? So how to make sure that we are able to apply those in the real world problem context, and then also help business realize those value. I think that I think is a big challenge.
That's a bit of a theme that we have when we speak to people. It's realizing that what you do as a data scientist, as anybody within data, is you're trying to solve a business problem. As soon as you leave academia, that is, you're trying to solve a business problem. So to be able to communicate your value on how you're solving that problem and what you're actually doing, as far as, hey, no, I didn't just develop this. What this did was cause this eventuality to happen, and this is why it impacted the business. That's such an important point.
But I think also on the key trend which you mentioned, right? One of the key trend across, I think if you see a lot of the conferences which also happens in AI ML world, a lot of the articles which are written now, is also how to scale these AI-based solutions from the garage mode, right? I think a lot of the solutions have been developed in a garage mode. But then when you try to scale up, I think that's when you realize the challenges of real AI. And even if you take the self-driving car as an example, right? We hear a lot about self-driving car, but it's still not on the road, right? For the reason, because a lot of these AI solutions, when you scale, there are a lot of boundaries of how accurate you want it to be, how self-learning you want to be with, and how much human curation you want on these insights, which creates a problem in really industrializing and scaling those solutions. So that's where I would say is a key trend, right? And it varies across the industry.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. Great. Well, that'll be it. I appreciate you coming on the show. I think that we've all learned a little bit today, and I would love to speak to you again in the future and have you back. And yeah, I really appreciate you being on.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike, for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully the story would be able to inspire some of them, some of your audience. And I would encourage them, if they have any questions, any career advice, feel free to reach out to me. We'll be happy to help.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.